we're also talking about Kobe Bryant. Actually, we're not even talking about Kobe Bryant. We're talking about the Black Mamba. Like when you saw Kobe rupture his Achilles,
Yeah.
okay? And almost anybody who ruptures their Achilles, they all say the same thing. I felt like somebody kicked me in the back of my leg, and I looked back there and there's nobody there. Basketball, the court, the ball, everything is the same. The thing that's changed is the speed of the game. These guys are really flying up and down the floor.
What are the best ways for stopping tendinitis or rupturing the tendon?
Okay. That muscle is called the gastrocnemius, and it's the biggest muscle in the calves. You say he's got a big calf, you're really looking at the gastrocnemius. Talk about being hamstrung. When you strain your hamstring, go a little bit lower in the kinetic chain to the calf. The one that we're most concerned about is the medial head of the gastroc. There's information out there that is very, very confusing about the inflammatory process. People always ask me, well, what's the best shoe? That's a tough question because the best shoe is the best shoe for you.
Yeah.
It might not be the most expensive shoe.
Welcome to GV Gems, episode 4, where we'll focus on basketball. My name is Steve Masterson from Nobol, and today I'm talking with Gary Vitti, the legendary former head athletic trainer for the LA Lakers. Gary spent decades protecting the health of some of the greatest athletes of all time, Magic Johnson, Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, and many, many others, helping the Lakers secure 8 NBA championships. Today, Gary is going to talk to us about the sport which made him legendary, basketball. Hiya, Gary.
Oh, I'm good. I'm good, Steve. Thanks for having me.
So, Gary, you've been in the sport of basketball for many years now. What are the most common injuries that you've seen over your time in basketball?
Sure. Statistically, ankle injuries are the most common that you would see in basketball, and probably, because they leave their feet, okay, and then they have to come down, and they usually will come down on somebody else's foot, okay, or on an inverted ankle, meaning turned in. We also see more recently, which is very interesting, and we can go down that rabbit hole if you want, that we're seeing a lot of calf industry injuries, which is your sport, tennis.
Yeah.
Okay. It's even called tennis calf. Okay. So we're seeing a rash of those, and some of the star players, and related Achilles tendon stuff, which the calf turns into the Achilles tendon and attaches to the heel bone, and then of course occupational hazard or finger injuries. We almost don't even really talk about them much because it's first off, it's non-weight bearing.
Yeah.
So there's things we can do to try to mitigate re-injuring a finger injury. But, when you start talking about weight-bearing stuff, you need your feet and you need your legs, okay, to play the game.
Yeah.
And so, if we start at the foot, we talk about the Achilles and then the calf, the ankle, it's all that lower leg stuff that we see the most.
So with the Achilles and the calf, is it the same as tennis? Because was it the inside calf rather than
it's the medial. Yeah. So when we say medial, we're talking about towards the midline of the body.
Yeah.
Say lateral, we're talking about the outside of the body. And for some reason, somebody knows this. I don't know. It's not me, but somebody knows that it's always seems to be the medial head of the gastroc. So when I say gastroc, that muscle is called the gastrocnemius. And it's the biggest muscle in the calf. So like when you're looking at somebody's calf, you say he's got a big calf, you're really looking at the gastrocnemius. And it has 2 heads, one on the midline, towards the midline of the body, and one towards the lateral, the outside of the body. And they actually cross the knee and attach on the back of your femur. There's also a muscle that is smaller that doesn't cross the knee joint. That's called the soleus. We don't really see too many injuries with the soleus. And then there's even some real long, slender muscle that's deep into the calf called the soleus. that runs the length of the calf. And sometimes we see that. That's a little bit more difficult to evaluate because it's such a deep muscle and such a slender muscle. But the one that we're most concerned about, the most crippling one, we talk about being hamstrung. When you strain your hamstring,
Yeah.
go a little bit lower in the kinetic chain to the calf.
Yeah.
The one that we're most concerned about is the medial head of the gastroc.
Okay. And again, I think on some other episodes, you were saying that when you damage the Achilles, so if we just sort of come down again, it's usually not when it's when you're preloading as opposed to.
That's
Uh,
correct.
so just talk us
Okay.
through this again. It was a
Okay. All right. So this is kind of my favorite part, but it gets a little wordy, and I'll try to use some colloquial language here. So when your muscles contract,
yeah,
there's two types of contractions. One is called a concentric contraction. And when you think about that word concentric, what that means is the muscle shortening. So if we look at my bicep and we do a concentric contraction, that means this muscle, your bicep, shortens and it pulls my arm up. So
okay,
your musculoskeletal system is a system of levers and fulcrums.
okay,
Lever, fulcrum is the joint.
okay,
Muscle contracts, pulls the lever through the fulcrum up to the other lever.
concentric,
Okay, concentric.
cool,
Okay, shortening. Now there's also what we call an eccentric load. That's lowering, that's this muscle lengthening to get it back to its original length.
okay,
Okay. That's an eccentric load. So if I'm doing a curl with a weight,
yep,
this is concentric, but now I'm letting the weight down slowly against gravity. That's eccentric. That's not your tricep moving. That's your bicep doing the work,
okay,
but it's lengthening. It's not
okay,
shortening. Okay. Now, if I put resistance here and pushed against it, that's my tricep doing a concentric contraction.
okay,
Okay. So what we're seeing in sports is that most of the injuries occur with eccentric load, not concentric load, because there's so much more tension lengthening the muscle than there is shortening it.
okay,
Okay. Let me go on before you.
yeah,
Okay. Hold that thought, whatever, because I want you to ask what you want to ask, but I just
okay,
want to finish the thought. When you saw Kobe rupture his Achilles,
yep,
okay, and almost anybody who ruptures their Achilles, they all say the same thing. I felt like somebody kicked me in the back of my leg, and I looked back there and there's nobody there.
yeah,
It's a non-contact injury, and it looks like they're exploding, and the tendon can't handle the tension, and it ruptures. It looks like that to the naked eye, but in reality, what's happening is the tendon is eccentrically loading. It's creating tension in the tendon so that you can toe off and explode off it. And if it can't handle that load, it's going to come apart. So now, what do we mean by that? It can be a complete rupture. It can be a partial rupture. It can be what we call a mid substance
yeah,
strain because we sprain joints, but we strain muscles and tendons. So there's combinations of all these things, or it could be repeated micro trauma over time,
okay,
which inflames the tendon, which what do we call? Achilles,
tendon,
inflammation of a tendon. You
tendonitis.
got it. Achilles tendonitis. See, you're
Something
learning.
stuck in there.
Yeah. See,
Something
yeah,
stuck
you
in there.
got something from the last one.
Okay, so another thing that you mentioned on another show, which is if you have tendonitis, which you just mentioned,
Yeah,
it isn't a sign that you're going to tear the tendon.
that's correct.
So-
It's crazy. I know. And I don't know why that is. Once again, somebody smarter than me knows this, but clinically speaking, the people that had, you know, like Achilles tendonitis over time,
yeah,
okay, don't seem to ever rupture the tendons. It's
yeah,
it's it's a very interesting thing, and it may be because if you if you continually insult a tendon that's inflamed, eventually you will change the properties of the tendon. And
Yeah.
you might have heard these terms thrown around, tendinopathy or tendinosis,
Yeah.
where because you've had so much micro tearing, the body sends what we call fibroblasts, which are cells to heal the micro tearing.
Yeah.
And so what you were born with your muscles and tendons and ligaments are strands that are in line with each other and in parallel fashion.
Yeah.
But when scar tissue lays itself down, it lays itself down at random. And
Okay.
when it does that, it loses the property of extensibility, which means shortening and coming back to the same
Yeah.
length. So maybe what's happened is that because you have all this scar tissue built up in the tendon, it's not going to rupture because you actually have a stronger structure.
Yeah.
But it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
It can't go
It's
like
not,
this.
yes, it's not a good thing because you've
Yeah.
lost the extensibility of what the
Okay.
tendon is supposed to do.
And what are the best ways for stopping tendinitis or rupturing the tendon?
Okay. That's a very complex question. It's a great one. Okay. So, probably the best way to address this, I'm trying because it's so complex, like where are we going to start? So probably we should start at the beginning with the heel strike.
Yeah.
Okay. So your foot hits the ground.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the next thing that happens is your arch collapses.
Yeah.
Okay. We call that pronation.
Yeah.
And that gets sort of a bad rep because you always hear about pronation bad. Pronation is not bad. We actually want pronation because what pronation does, it allows your arch to collapse, which will absorb the shock of all your body weight. It's like a spring, your
Yep.
arch. And it also to get the bigger bones on the inside of your foot to handle the load to take off.
Okay.
That's why they're bigger to
Yeah.
handle all the body weight. If you're loading the outside of your foot, you're going to break those smaller bones.
Okay.
Okay. You're going to have stress fractures, stress reactions. Okay. So those are the foot mechanics. The other thing that happens is as that arch collapses, we get what we call tibial torsion. Means your tibia, your shin bone, starts to rotate. The rotation pulls on your patellar tendon, tendon pulls on your quad tendon, and this is the kinetic chain. The load goes up the kinetic chain. Well, there's things that go up the back of the chain too, to the Achilles tendon. So if the tendon can't handle the load,
Yeah.
okay, and you repeatedly insult the tendon,
Yeah.
eventually it's going to go through a metabolic change and start to become inflamed. So we talked about the mechanics. So how do you counter the mechanics? By having good mechanics.
Okay.
Okay. So good flexibility in the calf,
Yeah.
okay, the tendon, okay, good foot mechanics. And sometimes that's very difficult to have because nobody has perfect mechanics. So how does your body distribute that load? And if it can't distribute the load properly, because of your musculoskeletal structure, then maybe we have to help you along with putting an orthotic
Okay.
in your shoe.
Okay.
Okay. And so when we're looking at shoes and we're looking at orthotics, we're kind of looking at two different things. And unfortunately, they kind of counter each other. Okay. And so the best way I can try to explain this is that we're looking for two things. Okay. We're looking for shock absorption, right? We talked about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Okay. With the arch collapsing.
Yeah.
Okay. But we're also looking for stability.
Mm.
Okay. So we don't want an unstable foot or an unstable ankle. We don't want any of our joints to be unstable, but we want them to be mobile.
Okay.
Big difference. Okay. And so, people always ask me, well, what's the best shoe?
Yeah.
That's a tough question because the best shoe is the best shoe for you.
Yeah.
It might not be the most expensive shoe.
Yeah.
Okay. It might be the shoe that works best for you, that distributes your load the best.
Mm.
And when you find that shoe, buy them all. Okay. And put them in your closet. Okay. Because eventually they're going to discontinue it. Okay. And the worst thing you can do is find a great shoe and then you can't get it again. Now you have to change. Just simply changing a shoe can cause Achilles tendonitis and a bunch of other issues. So going back, how do you navigate these waters? Because some shoes are built for stability, some shoes are built for shock absorption,
Yeah.
and they're usually not they don't work together that well, okay? Because the more shock absorption that you have, the less stability you have. The more stability you have, the less shock absorption you have. So you got to figure out, what do you need? Do you need more stability or do you need shock absorption? And then they invented the cross trainer, okay? And which was really trying, they used cross trainer to say that it was crossing sports, but it was really cross between stability and shock absorption.
Yeah.
Right. And so personally, that's me. I have a sort of high arch foot, but not so high that it's really rigid.
Yeah.
But if I have a really rigid shoe, that doesn't work for me. If I have a really shock absorbing shoe, that doesn't work for me. I need a good orthotic, but one that doesn't change my relationship to my foot to the shoe, which means something that's not too thick. Because when you pull that insert out of the shoe that you bought,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
paper thin, right?
Yeah.
And then you stick an orthotic in there, okay, that's like that thick, and it changes your relationship of your shoe, your foot to the shoe. I know this is getting really complex, but just stick with me. I'm trying to get you to the promised land. And so, what we're trying to do is give you shock absorption and stability at the same time so that the load goes up the Achilles tendon into the calf and helps you get through the tibial torsion part, because the muscles on the back of your leg are a lot bigger and stronger than the ones on the front of your leg.
Yeah.
So you hear the term shin splints.
Yep.
Okay. So now we've gone down another area. Um, all of this is related because it's all part of the kinetic chain. Okay? And so if you have good calf strength, but also good calf flexibility, okay, and good stability, but good shock absorption, all of these things working together, then you can pretty much negate having Achilles tendonitis. And not so much exploding, but the loading before you explode, the
Yeah.
tension that's created in that tendon to do that, and then the opposite. You ready for the opposite?
Go on.
Landing.
Okay.
Okay. When you land, you're eccentrically loading. You are creating a lot of tension.
Okay.
In those structures.
Yeah, and I suppose these guys have no problem getting up high because they're so tall, but coming down, that's a lot of energy.
Yeah, there's a lot more vertical in the professional game of basketball today than there was.
Yeah.
I've been around now for over 4 decades.
Mm.
Okay. And, most rebounds were taken below the rim.
Yeah.
Back in the old days. So it was big, strong guys that went in the paint, boxed out,
Yeah.
okay, and took a rebound. Now you got guys that have 40-inch vertical jumps. We had some big jumpers back then too, but now the game is played above the rim very often, very far from the basket very often. You don't even see as much offensive rebounding because the game is so fast. Okay. And so the faster the game, the more eccentric loading there is, because you're trying to slow down to get under control before you do any torque.
So do you think that's why there's the changes in the injuries now, more
I
tennis-like
think it
injuries?
contributes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's a contributory factor. The court is the same size.
Yeah.
The ball is the same.
Yeah.
The rim is the same. Okay. The rim is the same height.
Mm.
Everything is the same. Basketball is played on the same. Baseball is played in a different stadium. Football is the same. Hockey's different. Okay. It's an interesting thing. Basketball, the court, the ball, everything is the same. The thing that's changed is the speed of the game. These guys are really flying up and down the floor. Even the 5 championships that I was fortunate and lucky enough to be part of with Phil Jackson, we ran the triangle.
Mm.
It's pretty much a walk up offense. You shot the ball late in the shot clock.
Mm.
Now these guys are shooting the ball early in the shot clock. If you shoot the ball early in the shot clock, that translates into more shots
Yeah.
per game,
Yeah.
more points.
Mm.
I mean, it's simple math.
Yeah.
You know.
So let's carry on with the injuries now, and let's talk about warm up and recovery, and how can we sort of do, or with the players that you're playing with, you can see that they do a lot of warm up and recovery. But what are the sort of typical warm up routines that you would sort of recommend?
Yeah. I mean, for any sport, I mean, you don't need me for this. You just go to Google and go on YouTube and
Mm.
warm up exercises for basketball.
Mm.
You find a bazillion of them.
Mm.
Okay. So let's talk about what we're looking for as opposed to do this, do that, do the other thing.
Mm.
What you really want to do is try to mimic what's actually happening in the sport that you're trying to play, regardless of the sport. Now, today we're talking about basketball.
Mm.
So basketball is not it's not running in a straight line. It's not, like a sprint. You're not a track athlete, you know, running in a straight line. Your body works in diagonal patterns. And so that's what you kind of really want to do. You want to change speeds. You want to run forward. You want to change directions.
Mm.
Really, what you want is movement in more than one joint
Mm.
and more than one plane. And if you
Mm.
remember, we talked about the 3
Yeah.
different planes and
Yeah.
do you remember all that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yes,
yeah, it
exactly.
was
And then
good.
this one,
Which
uh,
episode was that?
okay.
I can't remember
Yeah,
what
I don't
episode.
remember. My life is like I was born and now I'm 72 and it's just been one big long year. I know when my kids were born. I know what years we won championships. I know my anniversary. I know my birthday, my kids' birthdays, But other than that, I mean, I like
It's
if
a
you
blur.
tell me what year this happened, I don't know. Okay. Um, and so, we have these different three different planes of movement,
Mm.
and then the movement is perpendicular to the plane. And so I think we talked once about, eating. Okay. We don't like uniplanar this would be motion in one plane.
Mm.
That's one plane. This is one plane.
Mm.
But we don't eat that way, do we?
No.
We eat like this. So we cross several planes. And that's the way our bodies move.
Mm.
So if our bodies are going to move, and particularly in sports, if they're going to move at high speeds in an uncontrolled manner,
Mm.
then we want to warm up, okay, so that all the things in our body that sense length and position and all that
Mm.
have been turned on and they're ready to go.
Mm.
So movement in more than one joint, more than one plane, mimicking the motions of
Mm.
the sport that you're going to play, in this case, basketball, retro movement, meaning backwards,
Yep.
okay, twisting, maybe lunging,
Yep.
okay, lunging with rotation,
Yep.
okay. I know you like to play pickleball and tennis. This is a basketball episode, but if you're doing those other sports, since we're on to warm up, maybe shadow swings where you're, using
Yep.
your paddle or your racket and
Yep.
you're going through those motions. I think
So chords and bands again.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're talking about, some of the floor stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So beyond the movement stuff, maybe even before you get to that point, or even after you get to that point, some bridging, some
Mm.
marching, like a lot of floor Pilates type stuff.
Yep.
Okay. And one of the things that is extremely important, and I think at some point we're going to talk about vibrating balls and stuff like that, where we're talking about releases and we talk about hip flexor reliefs
Yep.
and activating the glute.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of times when we talk about glute activation, we usually people assume, and rightfully so, we're talking about glute max,
Mm.
your butt, the
Mm.
big glute muscles.
Mm.
There's also gluteus medius
Mm.
on the side. So
Okay.
how do we do that? You brought up bands. I'm
Mm.
glad you did. It's
Mm.
perfect.
Mm.
Okay. we do what we call clamshells.
Mm.
So you want to get, for lack of a better description, in a fetal position. So
Mm.
you're on your side with your knees together.
Yep.
And you have band around your thighs.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're opening and closing. The
Okay.
band is providing resistance
And that works on the...
on your glute med. If
Yeah.
you don't have a band, you left at home,
Yeah.
use your hand.
Okay.
Okay. To resist
Okay.
resist up and then push down, but you resist it down. You're
Okay.
eccentrically loading when you're
Okay.
doing that.
Yeah.
Okay. So those would be, things I think that your audience that should kind of get your wheels moving.
Yeah.
So I told you the things to think about. Now you can go find the exercises that mimic what I just described.
Okay. Thank you. So, what would you suggest as a warm up and a recovery for weekend warriors? We keep having these discussions,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to ask you for, if I only do one warm up, what's it going to be?
Okay. Well, I think we just, discussed the warm up short of actually putting now a ball in your hand, because everything we talked about before that
Okay.
was without a ball.
Okay.
Okay. And it may or may not surprise your audience that if you went to an NBA team and watched pre-practice,
Hmm.
especially with a guy like Coach Riley, Pat Riley,
Hmm.
you might go 30, 45 minutes without touching a basketball.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, it's just running and doing stuff like we talked about.
Yeah.
But eventually you got to put a ball
Yeah.
in your hand. Now, the pros, I mean, they're going to do full court running, 3-line rush. To watch these gazelles is really quite an amazing thing. They can run full court with a basketball, so 90 feet, over 90 feet, with 3 passes, and the ball never touches the floor, and they've never traveled. That's how much ground they're covering, how quickly. Okay.
Say that again.
Okay.
So over 90 feet.
Yeah. So you have three guys. You have one guy in the middle,
Yeah.
like under the basket.
Yeah.
And then 2 guys on the wings.
Yeah.
And they're all running down the court towards the other basket. Okay. And the guy in the middle is the point guard, right? Say it's Magic Johnson.
Yeah.
Right. He's got the ball. And he starts by throwing the ball either to the guy on the left, to the right. He doesn't dribble.
Yeah.
All right. So they both start running. He throws the ball ahead to the first guy.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you follow the pass. Right. They run the length of the court and they lay the ball up on the other end without the ball ever touching the floor. And they didn't walk. They didn't travel. That's how much ground they're covering and how fast they're covering it. Now, obviously, the weekend warrior, unless you got 3 guys that are willing to do that, and that's not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So at some point, you do have to get, a ball in your hand.
Yeah.
And everybody has their favorite move.
Yeah.
So you should probably go out there and do that. But maybe more importantly, do the moves that you're not so good at. Get the ball in your non-dominant hand.
Okay.
Okay. And work on that. And get some shots up. Um, and try to do some different things, okay? Because one thing the body really doesn't like is doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. Because that's when if you remember on one of our other podcasts, we talked about repetitive movement causing compensation, causing dysfunction. And I even likened it to people that are in front of their computers.
Hmm.
So eventually your shoulders get round, your head gets forward, right? And that's not doing it. That's a micro motion. What do you think your body's going to do when you're insulting it over and over and over again, using
Yeah.
these big muscles, okay, doing the same things over and over again? Eventually, they're going to compensate and cause a dysfunction. So the idea is to not do that. Do
Yeah.
some different stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just one last question. There was a story that you told, and it's going back to Kobe, and I think it was because we're playing the finals now at the moment. And I think it was back in the day, it was in the finals, and Kobe had injured himself, and everybody just wrote him off and thought he wouldn't be there. And then you had to sort of travel with him on a Can you just recount that story
Sure,
one last
sure,
time?
sure. And this is why I get calls all the time, or I run into people all the time, and they're like, "I sprained my ankle. Kobe had a third-degree ankle sprain. He got back in a few days. I was out for 3 weeks, 6 weeks." I mean,
Yeah,
well, yeah. I mean, like he had me like within seconds, basically minutes of the injury, which we try to control, the swelling, and that's what we're going to talk about right now. And then, you know, we look at things as acute treatment. Like that means what do we do immediately, right on the spot?
yeah,
So like physical therapists are great, but quite often they don't see somebody
yeah,
until
yeah,
weeks sometimes.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And that changes drastically what they're capable of doing. Okay. No matter how great they are.
Mm,
Okay. Which is sort of a little bit different with athletic trainers in the sense that we're there on the spot so we can do things immediately to mitigate some of the swelling and the inflammatory process, which we're going to go down this road. And I want to be very specific about it because there's information out there that is very, very confusing
mm,
to people about the inflammatory process. Actually, let's just go down that road right now since I brought it up. You'll see and hear people talk about not controlling the inflammation
mm,
and letting your body become inflamed from the injury because that will trigger the healing process.
mm,
That is in many ways true, but it's confusing in the sense that if you did nothing, like I've had guys sprain their ankle and immediately you take their shoe off and their ankle is blowing up right before your eyes.
yeah,
We do not want that. That's part of the inflammatory process.
mm,
That's a part of the inflammatory process you do not want.
mm,
Okay, regardless of somebody telling you that the inflammatory process is good and triggers healing. Because your body will not lay down new cells with all that swelling, all that fluid, all those dead cells in there
yeah,
until your lymphatic system cleans all that stuff out. So
okay.
what we want to do is control that swelling.
Mm,
Very difficult to do if you're not a professional athlete or a collegiate athlete that has a full-time trainer
mm,
right next to you. So here's what happens in the bigs. Okay. Get you off the court. Okay. We get you in the training room. If you're taped, we cut it off. We see what we're looking at. Okay. How did you sprain your ankle? Is it an inversion sprain? Okay. Because, is it high ankle sprain? There's different types of sprains. Well, most of them are inversion sprains,
yeah,
inverted ankle. Okay. If that's starting to swell right away, you're probably going to wrap it up again.
mm,
Okay. With a wrap that and you're gonna put them in a slush bucket, a cold water bucket,
okay,
okay, an ice bucket, but you're gonna wrap it with something that the cold can get through the wrap,
okay.
okay? And kind of what separates a lot of the cryotherapy is cold therapy,
Mm,
with, say, an ice pack, you know, is if you use ice, okay, or you're in a slush bucket, the actual fluid, the water, the condensation between the ice bag and your skin
mm,
acts as a conduit to drive the cold deeper into the tissue that
okay,
you don't get if you have like a frozen pack in the refrigerator and it's like
okay.
it's cold but it's dry.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? We want something to conduct the cold into your tissue. Okay. So we want to control, first and foremost, we want to control the swelling.
mm,
Okay. And you have to do that with ice, okay, and compression. Okay.
okay,
And so now the person's in the ice bucket for, let's say, 20 minutes or as long as they can stand it. We even have what we call toe caps, which were like neoprene,
okay.
like a diver's wetsuit, but it's just for the
The toes.
toe. Yeah, just for the top of your foot. You put it over their toes because that's not where the injury is, and,
Yeah.
and the toes get cold and numb and tingly. We don't want that. So
Okay.
we have like what a scuba diver would use. They put that over their foot. You can find those online, right?
Yeah.
Put them in the slush bucket. Okay. So what the ice is doing is several things. It's constricting the vessels,
Hmm.
okay, to try to help reduce the swelling.
Hmm.
Okay? And what it's also doing, which very few people talk about, is that there's going to be cellular death from the actual tearing of the tissue.
Hmm.
Those cells are going to be ripped apart, right? But there's going to be cells around those cells that were not damaged.
Yeah.
But when we also have this cell death, we also have what we call a hypoxic reaction, lack of oxygen.
Hmm.
Hypoxia means lack of oxygen. Okay. And that's sort of your body's defense mechanism. And so when we have that reduced oxygen supply to that area, the cells that didn't die because of the injury are not getting enough oxygen. And then they die from hypoxia.
Okay.
But what happens with ice is that it slows the metabolism down of those cells,
All right.
so they don't need as much oxygen. Therefore, you have less cell death. Less cell death means you can get fewer damaged cells out of that area,
Okay.
okay, because they're okay. You have less cell death,
Hmm.
okay, cell damage, cellular damage. Now you yank them out of the ice bucket, you cut that wrap off, okay, you see what you have. Pretty much no matter what you do, if it's a third-degree ankle sprain, you're still gonna have swelling. So now you have these, my hands,
Hmm.
okay? And we got some lotion, and put it on their foot. You start at the forefoot, just below the toes, and you just start pushing the swelling up their leg.
Okay.
It literally looks like there's an alien underneath their skin. You can actually roll it.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes people are squeamish. They look at it, they go, "What are you doing?" You know? And what you're trying to do is push that swelling out of there to give your body a better chance to clean it up and
Okay.
lay down new cells. So as soon as you do that, now you got to wrap it up again so it doesn't start swelling again. You got some of the
Okay.
swelling out. You don't want, but no matter what you do, you've torn tissue. It's going to want to bleed out. It's going to want to. So now here's where your story with Kobe.
Yeah.
Okay. Immediately I was there. We did all that. Now the beauty was we got on a plane and we flew to Indianapolis. Normally, a home game, he goes to his house, I go to my house. Okay. And I don't see him till the next morning.
Yeah.
But the fact that we were both on the plane together, because what's going to happen within a couple of hours? Yeah.
Yeah.
You know the cartoon where he hits his
Yeah.
thumb and
Thumb.
it's throbbing?
Yeah.
Well, that's what's happening in your foot.
Okay.
And at some point, you got to cut it. I can't take it. I got to cut this off.
Yeah.
Okay. And you do. You cut it off. You wrap it up with a wrap that
Yeah.
flew, and you stick them back in the ice
I-
bucket.
Okay.
You start the treatment from scratch all over again. 20 minutes or whatever they can stand in there. You pull it out. You milk it again. You wrap it up. A few hours later, because you're together.
Yeah.
So now we're 5, 6 hours, whatever we were, whatever the flight was to Indianapolis. We're doing that on the flight. Now we get to the hotel. We switch rooms. We get adjoining rooms. Kobe, when you can't handle it anymore, pound on the door.
Yeah.
Okay. Knock on the door. I open the door, created a training room in the room. And so we did it all night, every day. He missed the next game.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we were controlling that swelling. Now we talked about foot mechanics, and we talked about we don't want an unstable joint, which happens when you tear a ligament. That joint becomes unstable because that's what ligaments do. A ligament holds a bone to another bone.
Yep.
A tendon holds a muscle, connects a muscle to a bone.
Yep.
Okay. we don't want instability, but we want mobility.
Yeah.
Well, because of the injury now, you have 26 bones in your foot, okay? Now those bones aren't working together very well, okay? And so now you have to what we call mobilize them. Literally, you take one bone in between two fingers and another bone that it articulates with in two fingers, and you move them around on each other.
Okay.
Okay. And so now you understand the point is that you can't do this because you don't have me living
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah.
You know, where Kobe and I were living together.
Yeah.
And we were able to do this 24 hours a day for a few days. He's on, and this is the story. This is the punchline of the story. Now we're at practice, okay? And on a day off in between games, and he's sitting on the treatment table, and we've done all the modality stuff, and now the last part is to mobilize and then wrap him back up again. And I'm doing the mobility, and there's a small bone in your foot that's called the cuboid bone, and it's a key. It's key in ankle injuries. It's if you can mobilize that bone. The other thing I'm glad this came up because the other thing that's really helps people with ankle injuries is to put an orthotic in their shoe. Even if you
Okay.
go to the CVS and you buy a Dr. Scholl's orthotic,
Yeah.
okay, when you support the arch, that takes a lot of the load
Yeah.
off of the tissue that you've damaged.
Okay.
It's holding those bones closer to each other instead of the traction that's pulling them apart from your body weight and your arch collapsing.
Yeah.
So if you can control the arch, it really helps. I'm glad that came up. That's really important. And that cuboid plays a part of that bone. And so I'm mobilizing, and Kobe had a pretty unstable ankle because he had sprained his ankle so many times.
Yeah.
Coming down on somebody else's foot or whatever. And so I'm mobilizing, and all of a sudden he feels it, and I feel this clunk, and his eyes open up, and I felt it, and I looked at him, and I said, "This is going to be either going to be really good or really bad,
or you broke him."
Yeah. Okay. And he got off the table barefoot. He's walking around. He turned around and looked at me and goes, "You did it. I can play." And he did. Okay. And he played so he missed game 3.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we beat him in 6. Okay. Okay. Probably wouldn't have without him doing that. I don't take any of the credit. If it wasn't me, it would have been somebody else that would have got him to the promised land. But we're also talking about Kobe Bryant. Actually, we're not even talking about Kobe Bryant. We're talking about the Black Mamba. Okay, because there's two different people. Kobe Bryant's the sweetest guy you've ever met in your life. The Black Mamba, that's a different cat.
Thanks, Gary. Some really amazing stories, which I think our audience are going to really love, and it's going to be inspiring for them. Some great advice. Unfortunately, like Kobe, they can't take you around with them, but they can take your words of wisdom and hopefully incorporate that into their routines. Talking about routines, this has been episode 5, all things basketball. Thank you for watching GV Gems.